Good evening, everybody, and welcome to you all to this very first Tricks of the Trade webinar. This is a monthly returning webinar series. And as I said, this is a very first one in this group, our new Via Francigena Road to Rome community. And bear with me today because this is my very first time using StreamYard. So I'm not sure if everything's going to go 100% as planned, but hopefully in the next couple of months, if anything goes wrong today, hopefully in the next couple of months, things will run more smoothly. So first things first, the comments section. So it's possible to write questions or comments below this live broadcast. However, because we are streaming in a group, a Facebook group, Facebook doesn't give StreamYard permission to show your name and your photo. So if you want your face, like your photo and your name visible, I ask you to go to streamyard.com/Facebook. There you can give StreamYard your permission to show your photo and your name when commenting on this live broadcast. So why these webinars? So during a Road to Rome event last summer, where we walked for 4 months along the entire Via Francigena, we met with lots of different professionals from the slow travel field. And they have a lot of interesting tips and tricks to share that could be useful to other people who would be interested in maybe following their exact or almost their exact same road. And the first person that came into my mind when we decided to organize this webinar series is Sandy Brown. I had the pleasure of first meeting Sandy last year online, also on StreamYard actually, when he was promoting the two, like volume 2 and volume 3 of his Via Francigena guidebooks. And then last summer, during the Road to Rome event, I actually had the pleasure of meeting him in person while he was doing research on his first volume, the Via Francigena guidebook from Canterbury to Lausanne. And so in today's webinar, Sandy is going to share some tips and tricks with you on what it means to write a guidebook. So I'm very pleased to welcome this evening Sandy to our live broadcast. Hi, Sandy.
Hi, Myra. Hey, I just want to say props to you because I did about half of part of the Via Francigena last summer. And when I saw you, you were doing 3,000 kilometers, the entire route of the Via Francigena. And it was hard work. And somehow you managed to stay happy and joyful the entire time. So props to you for quite a summer of walking last year.
Thank you, Sandy. And actually, yeah, my job was pretty intense while communicating every day what was happening along the entire Road to Rome. But your job was also not easy, because I remember we were Sandy joined us by bicycle in the Grand Est region for research, but almost after a couple of turns, he already got left behind. He fell behind because he had his little notebook in his hand and was taking notes. And I was very curious about this because I never realized how guidebooks were written. So I guess your job is pretty intense as well.
Yeah, it can be pretty intense. And in that time in the Grand Est, you all were covering about 3 walking stages in one day by bicycle. But my volume 1 book is the walking stage. And so I had to take extra time in order to cover it. So I wouldn't have to come back right away and do it again. I did come back and do it again anyway, just so I could kind of ingrain it in my mind. But I was so impressed with your work and the work of the other people on the Road to Rome crew. And I was so happy, even though I think it was only 4 days, to be able to spend 4 days with you all as you made your way from Canterbury to Rome to Santa Maria de Luca.
Yes, I am. I have to say, I feel a bit nostalgic about those days, but that's not really what we're here for, to talk about Road to Rome and the days we spent together, because we want to know what you have to say about writing a guidebook. And so you prepared a presentation, which actually looks pretty amazing, very well organized. So if you're ready, I would say take it away.
Okay.
The floor is yours.
Okay, will do. Thanks so much, Mia. And I just want to start by saying that it's really a privilege to work with Cicerone Press on putting together guidebooks for the major pilgrimage routes. I started walking on pilgrim routes in 2008, and I saw the lack of good guidebooks when I was walking some of the alternate routes. And I proposed a guidebook for Cicerone Press, which then would produce it and distribute it worldwide. But they already had one in process. So then a little bit later, I came back and asked if I could do another pilgrimage route. And that's how I got started on the whole thing. So I am going to share my screen and run through a little bit of a presentation. And then there'll be plenty of times for you to for for you to ask questions along the way. So let's see. Let me just get this going. I'm going to share this screen, and there we have it. Take it away. So, Mira, tell me, are you able to see the screen that I'm sharing now?
No, it hasn't popped up yet in the among the things that I can share on
Ah,
the
okay.
screen, unfortunately.
Okay, here we go.
Oh, okay,
I
yes,
just have
there.
to
Oh, okay.
press the right buttons here. There we go. Okay, can you see it now? Okay. Mira, let's see. Just want to make sure you can see it.
Yes,
And,
I can see it. I can see
oh,
it.
good,
All
good,
clear,
good, good.
crystal.
Okay, great. So I proposed to Cicerone Press back in 2014 that I do a guidebook for the Way of St. Francis from Florence to Assisi and Rome. So I had retired from my career as a pastor, a Methodist pastor, and I went out in the summer of 2014 to learn Italian and to research the Florence to Assisi to Rome walk. I spent 3 months in Italy, and what happened is I fell in love with Italy. It was an unintended consequence of my guidebook writing, and the result is I live in Italy now. Then Cicerone Press came back to me, and Cicerone Press said, "We would like you to write our new Camino de Santiago guidebook for the Camino Frances." Cicerone had one of the very first guidebooks. It was written by the pilgrim pioneer Allison Reggio, and they needed an update because Allison was no longer able to go out. And since then, actually, Allison died. So I gathered a team of people together, and in 2018, 2019, we researched and I wrote the Camino de Santiago Camino Frances Guidebook, which was released in January of 2020. And I had said to Cicerone that as a condition of doing the Francis guidebook, I wanted to be able to write the new Via Francigena guidebooks. And they kind of looked at each other, Jonathan Williams and Joe Williams of Cicerone Press, and they said, okay, if that's what it takes. So for the last years, since 2018, I've been working on a new 3 volume series on the Via Francigena. You can see the pictures here on part 2. That's my wife, Teresa. She's walking down from the Great St. Bernard Pass, heading toward Aosta. And to the right, you can see part 3. And anybody that's walked on the Francigena through Tuscany knows this little place just below Montalcino and after Ponte d'Arbia in the vineyards of Tuscany. So I want to talk about what is involved, at least from my perspective, of a guidebook, what it means to put one together. And I would say there are six main things. And I want to go through those items with you now so that you can see what's involved. And I just want to start by looking at a couple of pages in a guidebook. This is my Via Francigena Volume 2. You can see that here's a picture. Aha, that's Teresa again. This time she's walking up to the Great St. Bernard Pass, which is right over there, the hospice of Great St. Bernard is. So you have to be taking photographs. That's one of mine. You need to be able to put together elevation profiles. For those that haven't walked, surprise, it's quite a steep journey on the last day, walking up to almost 2,500 meters or 8,200 feet elevation, I think it is, to the top of the pass through the Alps. You also need to be able to put maps together. And this is a one-page map. It's only 12 and a half kilometers, but it shows the route in red. All of this area around it is topography showing the very steep mountains all around. You can see them there in the photograph. And this describes some of what I have to gather then as a guidebook writer and what every guidebook writer needs to have. In order to draw a map like that, you need to have a GPS and be conversant with how to do that. You need to be conversant with a camera and then the technology as well as the writing that comes as part of the work. So to me, the very first part of walking or of writing a pilgrimage walking guidebook is to do the walk. Here's a picture of me. I'm walking by myself in France. I put the camera on the ground on a tiny little 6-inch tall tripod so that I could get a picture of myself from my mother, who demands that I have a picture posted on Facebook every day so that she can make sure that I'm okay. So it really begins with the walk and with the GPS. This is a picture of my smartphone. I use the GPS on my smartphone, and I want to show you what's in the screen here. This golden line, this straight line, is the official track of the Via Francigena in the French town of Rennes. We know it spelled R-E-I-M-S, has one of the most beautiful cathedrals in the world, the cathedral at Rennes, which is right here at this star. I walked once, that's the red line. I ended that day because I was meeting Myra there, and then I came through a second time, that's the purple line. So what this gives is the route that I walked as I record my steps. I'm not as, I'm walking around on the road. It looks like I had a couple of drinks, but actually that's what just happens in GPS tracks in the city. As I walk, I'm dictating into my phone. And here's what I dictated. From the cathedral with the building behind you, go straight ahead, turning left at the stoplight onto Rue Chanzy. So I'm saying you start at the cathedral right here and you walk this way. And I said turn left. Yes, turn left at the stoplight. And there's Rue Chanzy. So all I have to do for a 1,100 kilometer track like that is do the same thing about 5 or 6 or 10,000 times. But at the end of each day, after dictating an email to myself, I send it to myself, I clean up the language, and I have a recorded track and my oral description of the track. Now, when I'm there, I also need to be taking pictures. So I took a picture of the cathedral, and of course, I'm looking for the very best pictures for the book. So there's from the outside, there's a picture from the inside to see why they consider it one of the great Gothic cathedrals of the world. I thought, I want some fun angles, so I took a picture from the pulpit, and then I came back later at night and I wanted to have a nice picture of it lit up because I had seen it lit up from afar and I wanted to have that image. You can see what my job is here just during the walk. Get the GPS tracks recorded, make a description of where you're walking, and then capture as many great photographs as you possibly can. Then the research starts. Here I am sitting on a bed. This actually is in Rome in 2014. But the research involves the history and the culture, and then some of the details like lodgings on the route. So when we at Cicerone do a pilgrimage guidebook, we always use a format that we feel gives the best information to the walker. So the distance from the previous municipality that has lodging, so from one place you have to walk 5 kilometers, in this case to get to Fucecchio, which is a Tuscan town here in Italy on the Via Francigena. You know that the elevation, which should be here, but it's not. Oh, it is 46 meters. You know the population's 23,000. And then you also know, based on these symbols, that there is food available. There's a grocery store. There's accommodation. There's an ATM. There's a bus, a train station, a pharmacy, a clinic, a hospital, and tourist information. That's what each of those symbols stand for. Those have to be researched on the ground, but also afterwards as I consult resources to find out. And then I also want to know, because whenever you're on a trip, you want to know if you're there yet. I want to know the distance to the end of the journey. That's 372.9 kilometers from Fucecchio to Rome, which is the end of the traditional Via Francigena. You then have to write a description of the town. That's a description here in Fucecchio, which is in volume 3, and you can see there's an accommodation there as well. So part of the research too then is adding up all of those GPS tracks that I've recorded on my phone and creating a line that gives you those distances. So if you can look very closely, you can see this isn't just a straight line or a single line. It's a combination of many lines all on top of or next to each other. Those are individual days on the walk. So this is my walking this last year and then previous year as well. This year I walked from Calais to Lausanne. I've walked twice, Lausanne to Lucca, and twice Lucca to Rome. I'll go back in April and do a bike ride again from Calais, perhaps Canterbury, to probably Besançon. When I'm done with the track, I put it all together so that I know the distances between the points. For example, from Lausanne down to Tours Haldimand, 1.2 kilometers, and everything gets a distance from the final destination. So it's not a bad idea to be pretty good at arithmetic so that you can add some of those details along the way. The research is also about accommodations. This is an example of a hostel that we might show. And we have 11 different categories of infrastructure. This is, are they open year round? Are there private rooms? Are there dormitory rooms? Will they take reservations? Is there a kitchen where I can cook? Do they have breakfast? Do they have a communal dinner? Will they take a credit card? Is there washing machine, storage for the bike? And if possible, is it accessible to people with disabilities? Then we have the number of rooms and the number of beds in those rooms, the prices for dormitory, single, double, and triple room, then the address, website, email address, telephone, and any description of it. So that's something on the order of about 20 data points for every single lodging. And you can see the guidebook work is about attending to many details before you've even started to write. So as I walked this year in France, I would see a sign. It would say Gîte, and I look at my reference material and I'd see maybe a phone number. So I'd go up to the door and I would take a picture of the phone numbers that are listed, because I'll have to, or an assistant will have to go back and make the calls and make sure that the infrastructure is correctly reproduced within the guidebook. Then it's time to write. This is the guidebook I'm writing right now. It's on the California Missions Trail. The introduction is the most important thing, and then descriptions of the stages. And the stages include not just walking descriptions, but also details about each of the towns. So I wrote this introduction. I'll just read a couple of sentences of what I wrote about the road from Lausanne to Lucca on the Via Francigena. It may be true that all roads lead to Rome, but few roads lead to Rome with as many marvels as the Lausanne to Lucca stretch of the Via Francigena. This glorious route begins along the shaded promenades of Lake Geneva, Lac Léman, turns upward on breathtaking mountain trails across the Alps, descends to flat farmland roads in the Po Valley, climbs in the mountains again at Chisa Pass, and hugs the hillside near its end in Lunigiana to enjoy sweeping vistas of the sea. So that's the writing part. In my introduction, I try to help people fall in love with the route just as I have fallen in love with it. Then it's time to gather all of those materials that I have put together. Here's the statue with the man with the document in his hand, determined to go ahead, and that's what I feel like after I've done my writing and it's time to submit. I gather my elevation profiles. I write the captions to all of the photographs. Here's just a few. Typically, I will submit 400 or 500 photographs, and each one needs to have a caption. And then I'll put them all together in a file. In the old days, in fact, the first time I did this, so not even 10 years ago, we would mail the materials. Now we transfer the file. And it's not quite as satisfying as going to the post office to mail your manuscript, but that's how we do it. Then the production begins. And this is the production team at Cicerone Press. This is our Christmas card. You can see I'm on there because I'm associate publisher for Cicerone, focusing on pilgrimage tracks. And these are other people on the team. I'm just going to point out Andrea, who is the editorial director. She has been the one that's edited my last two manuscripts. This is John, who was the graphic designer, and Claire, who also helped in the graphic design. And this whole team will be working on it by the time it's done. There's Hannah with marketing, and there's Sarah with sales. The publishers and editors are included here. Cicerone Press puts together something on the order of 40 to 50 guidebooks every year. and we have a total corpus of about 400 guidebooks on trekking, mountaineering, bicycling, mountain climbing all around the world. So then I get my edited text back. This is just before it's going to go into the design. And you see this little command here. This says that picture number 1086 is the code for the book. Picture number 16 from Photoshop with this caption is going to go into the book. And I proofread that, and then it's generated. And that's a page I already read. And there's that picture that the computer code put in that place. For Via Francigena walkers, you'll remember this bridge. This is the pont, the bridge of the Italian town of Pont Saint-Martin, which is in the Aosta Valley after you come down from the Great St. Bernard Pass. Then a very joyful something happens, and that something is the book arrives in your hands. I always take a picture of a guidebook on the day I receive the sample copy, and it's so satisfying to hold that book in your hands. The production process takes about 6 months, production and printing. You can see that one thing that makes this book different is it's an official English language guide for the Via Francigena. So another step is that Myra's colleagues had already reviewed my submission to make sure it fits with what the official European Association of Via Francigena wants to say about its roots. Then the next step happens, and you cannot be an author and continue in the work without publicizing your material. And so that has taken the form during COVID of doing Zoom sessions with various people that are interested in the Via Francigena. And these are some of the Zoom sessions that I've done over the space of about the last year. And the book is getting good reviews. And I'm very delighted, especially with the Camino Frances book, that even with COVID, the Frances book is now going into its second printing because of very strong sales. I feel that people are ready to get out, they're ready to do a pilgrimage walk, and it's a real pleasure to be able to help them with doing something like a guidebook that helps them to be able to make their plans. So, Myra, that is my presentation, and I hope I didn't blab on for too long.
No, not at all. Thank you so much. It was very interesting, I have to say. And we have gathered also some questions. I have to say, I had to get them from different parts because some people wrote in the comments below here, some others wrote below a previous post. So I put them all together, and so I'm going to ask these questions to you, and hopefully then our public will have an even better idea of what it means to write a guidebook. So one of the questions we received is, what kind of camera did you use for your photographs?
Oh, that's a great question. I thought about including a picture of my camera, but I carry a lightweight mirrorless Sony camera. It's the Sony Alpha 3400. And then I put a big lens on it with a good zoom so that I can get wide angles and I can do a little telephoto as well. The lens makes it a pretty heavy camera to carry around, but I really like the flexibility of being able to use a zoom lens and also having good wide angle abilities. So you can see the results, I think, in some of those pictures. I think that Sony does a really great job with the church interiors and then also with the exteriors. I think that what makes a guidebook interesting for people is not just to read words, but also have images that help put themselves into the setting so they can see and begin to feel what it will be like for them as they walk or bike the route. That's a great question.
Yes, absolutely. I agree. Like visual material content is essential for people also to know what they can expect, what's coming their way, maybe the day afterwards or in a week. So you definitely recommend a proper photo camera instead of a cell phone. I mean, we know that most of the cell phones right now, smartphones, they have good cameras, but there is still a difference between a
Yeah.
smartphone and a proper camera.
Yeah, I do. And the difference is getting less and less as smartphone cameras get better and better. I think my iPhone 11 can do a photograph with a file size of something like 1.5 megabytes. But my Sony Alpha 3400 does a raw format image, and it's a file of 25 megabytes.
Mhm.
So that's something like 15 times the amount of information that would come in a cell phone camera. So to me, that helps the graphic artist on the end. They can adjust the exposure and the colors with
Mhm.
much more information. It's going to be a better finished product.
Yes, absolutely. Okay, so on to the next question. Several questions about the information on lodgings. How do you
Mhm.
keep the information on lodgings updated? For example, Joanne wrote about the Camino Frances. There are so many albergues. How do you possibly research them all? Do you sleep in every single place? So how do you keep these lodgings and accommodation, the information, how do you keep it updated? And
Yeah.
in order to research them, do you have to sleep everywhere?
Well, first of all, I want to out Joanne because Joanne is somebody that lives not very far from me here in Lucca. She lives, I think, in Liguria. And Joanne and I had a nice coffee together in Piazza Amphitheatro. And then she went off and walked much of the route with you from Rome to Santa Maria de Leuca, I
Yes,
think, Mira.
exactly. The entire Via Francigena of the South.
Yeah, yeah. So very impressive, Joanne. So, fortunately, on the Camino Frances, I'm not doing it by myself. One of my partners is my sister, Rocky Brown. Sandy Brown, Rocky Brown. My full name is Sanford. Her full name is Roxanne. She's a Spanish English interpreter by trade in Seattle and a multiple time pilgrim. And I asked her to head our lodging research on the Camino Frances book. Now, that's important because on the Frances, there are 600 albergues and there are another 500 hotels that are within 2 or 3 blocks of the route. So that's 11 or 1200 accommodations, and it takes constant attention to keep them updated. We've just updated, and the way that Rocky has done this is she's made contact with the proprietors or the operators of each of the albergues. So I say, without bragging about my sister Rocky, that she knows more about the accommodations than any other American because she knows the individual accommodation owners and has been in touch with them over the last 3 years. And I think there are probably few people in the world that know as much about them as Rocky. I had help from a friend of mine, Aaron Zabalia, for volume 2 and volume 3. And if I did not hear back on an email from a lodging operator, Aaron gave him a telephone call and got the information directly. And I'm not sure yet what I'll do on the lodgings of the French and the first part of the Swiss portion we'll just have to see. But I also know that the European Association of Via Francigena does a great job of keeping up to date on the lodgings. So if you go to viafrancigena.org and look at the accommodation list, you'll find them there. Look also at the app of the Via Francigena, which is a really good app and has accommodations there. And then I'm actually very pleased to say that Guanze, which is a Spanish firm, Guanze.com, has started listing accommodations from Lausanne to Rome on the Via Francigena. So GRONZE.com. There's a lot of information out there. In a guidebook, it can't, by nature of a guidebook, be up to the minute. As we get new listings, we put them on the book's website on cicerone.co.uk. So, for instance, on the Frances, you can see an updated list there. So lots of places to go for that. We're giving suggestions, but always remember, because a guidebook takes 6 months to produce, the listings are going to be about 6 months out of date. That doesn't hurt too much in normal times. In COVID times, everything's kind of up for grabs. Great question. Another great question.
Okay, so we have another one, and this is a nice one, a funny one. Can you confirm that you don't lose weight walking the Via Francigena? Do you prefer a good glass of red wine, champagne, or a beer? It doesn't really have to do with writing guidebooks, this question, but still lots of people are curious. I have to admit, the first month of my Via Francigena, I gained some weight. But then after 1 month, I started losing weight. And at the end of the 4 months, I was definitely a bit skinnier than before, but there are many, many temptations along the road. So what about you, Sandy?
Oh, I think I have a similar situation with you. This year, I walked or biked something in the neighborhood of 3,500 kilometers, kind of like you, twice in California and then once from Calais to Lausanne. In California, I lost hardly any weight. There's so much fast food there. But by the time I was done with Calais to Lausanne, I'd lost 10 pounds. So something on the order of 4 to 5 kilos. But to the person that asked the question, you usually gain it all back because you can't possibly keep up that pace when you're back at home. I was walking 50 to 60,000 steps a day. You'd have to keep walking or replace it with some other exercise like that when you're home. That's hard to do. And then second answer is, do I prefer a good glass of red wine or a beer? And I gotta say, in the summertime, nothing replaces a beer. But otherwise, a glass of red wine for me at night.
I agree. Okay, so here we have a next question. What is the proportion of time you spend doing field research along the route and doing desk research at home?
Oh, I would say that it's something like 2 to 1, 2 at home and 1 on the road, something like that. For the California Missions book, I have purchased something like 25 history books to research the route because I wasn't satisfied with what I was finding. And so I've done a lot of reading. And with all of that reading, I feel like I should have a bachelor's degree in history of the California Missions Trail. And there usually are better resources along the Via Francigena for artworks and such. So, and there's less controversy as well. I mean, the history has been settled here, for a long time, with a few invasions in and out over the last couple centuries, and not quite as volatile as California was for the last 150 years or so. So I would say about 3 to 1. One is the joy of
Okay.
walking, and three is all the work that it takes at home to gather information.
Okay, perfect. So, next question. This is a question I could actually also answer, but we're going to ask you. Can you get by in Italy with simple Spanish?
With Spanish, yeah.
Yes.
Okay,
Um,
Mira, go
I
ahead.
would
Why
I
don't you
would
answer that?
say I would say you don't even need Spanish because English is usually suffices because yeah, like especially along the Via Francigena, they're used to foreigners. Everybody speaks a basic English or even better, and if not, Italians are famous for hand gestures. So in one way or another, you'll definitely be able to communicate if you have a minimum of Spanish. I'd say you'll even be able to communicate better.
Well, Mira, that's a great answer. I just want to out you along the way. I've heard your Italian, it's flawless. I've heard your French, it's fabulous. Your English is outstanding. And I don't know what other languages you have, but you're the quintessential European polyglot, and so I really admire that. I wish more Americans were like you, and I endeavor myself to be better at the languages of the Francigena. Great answer, thank you, and congratulations on all your language
Oh,
study.
thank you. Actually, some of them need a little bit more work, but I'm on it. Let's see. What are the biggest challenges of writing a guidebook? The things you run into often that really yeah are challenges to overcome.
Well, I think the first biggest challenge is making the walk. So, just as an example, in France on the Via Francigena is a collaboration with the French Federation Randonnée, and the GR 145, which is what the Via Francigena is called in France, is a very scenic route. And it's not very direct sometimes. So you can see you want to go from point A to point B. And there's a perfectly good, even a quiet asphalt road to go from point A to point B. But the GR 145 and the signs will take you to point C. And it will do it beautifully because you have to walk through the woods. And that's a nice thing. They want every day to be a great hike. Well, a pilgrim may want every day to get them closer and closer to the end goal, even though, the journey is the goal. And so, as a guidebook writer, you have to walk the official route so you understand it. And then you need also to walk the obvious alternate routes so that you can describe those to walkers as well. So when we left Rennes that day on our bicycles heading down to Chalon-en-Champagne, do you remember, Mira? We took a couple of diversions to go a little bit quicker on our way. Well, I had to go back and redo all those because I can't describe the diversion. I have to describe the official route. So it takes longer. And I started walking this year in March on the California Missions Trail. I ended at the end of October. I had a vacation in there, but it was a lot of walking. And I had never said to myself before, I'm done walking for the year. I always wanted to walk farther. But this year, I was ready. And I was ready to take a little bit of a break, which I've been doing. So I think the hardest is covering all the ground. I would say another thing that's hard is making sure that you're accurate so that as people use your directions, they're not going to get in trouble. So I'll tell you the story. I walked the Camino Frances one year. The next year I walked, and it was very foggy. And there were some young people walking with me. And I looked at the route and I said, "Oh, I walked this way last time. Turn right here." And it's the steeper way to get down to Roncesvalles, down the Pyrenees. Then I got to Roncesvalles, and my friends that I directed were nowhere to be found. And just at nightfall, I see a red truck from the Bomberos pulling up with my friends in the back. They had got lost and they had to call the search and rescue to come and get them. And it was because of my directions. And so from that point on, I've been very diligent to make sure I really understand the directions, and they're going to always be right.
Okay, so we have another interesting question here. What was your personal transition from a pastor to a guidebook pilgrim? Linear or happy
Wow.
accident?
What a personal question that is.
We want to know everything about you, Sandy, everything.
Well, let me tell you, I've had a um, I've had a complicated relationship with the church. I retired 3 times. So I retired first in 2001 and I went into nonprofit work. Then I was called back by my bishop, and my bishop said, "We've got a church that has a big building project. You're good at that. I want you to come and serve the church and build this new building." So I did that. And then I retired again in 2014. So then in the meantime, I had started pilgrimage walking, and I found my love, this walking in Europe especially, and seeing the sites, places I'd studied in medieval history in college, and then describing them to people, being part of the pilgrim community. So I built that church. I retired again in 2014, kept walking, wrote my first guidebook, and then I got a call back from the bishop. And 3 years later, I retired again. So if linear looks like that, I would say it was a linear transition. Or maybe linear is like this. That's the kind of transition I had. I'm still a pastor. I'm still ordained. I'm in the retired relationship in the Methodist Church. I can do weddings, funerals, communion, baptisms, and so on. But I'm doing my love now. And there's no Methodist congregation here in Lucca that the bishop can call me to.
Yeah, because you live in Lucca, right? How are things in Lucca? All good?
Lucca's great. We love it here.
Also in
Teresa,
winter?
yeah, well, the winter has been cool, but I went back to Seattle for Christmas, and between Christmas and New Year's, we had about 6 inches of snow. And Lucca hasn't had snow and probably won't. In US temperatures, it's about 50 degrees during the day. We've had a solid week of beautiful blue skies and sunshine. So the weather's been great.
Same here, same here. Okay, so we have another question from Agneta from Sweden. She asks how she can get a hold of your books.
Yeah.
And so actually someone else, another user, then replied with the Cicerone website.
Yeah.
So I guess this is the website. You can also go, I'm just going to show it here. You can also visit our website, the website of the European Association of the Via Francigena Ways, which is viafrancigena.org. And if you go to the section Get Started, you will also find the volume 2 and volume 3 of Sandy's guidebooks. and I think in 2023, Volume 1, or
Volume 1 will be
when?
released in February of next year, so it's about
Okay,
a year
yeah,
away.
1 year left. So,
Yeah,
um,
Mira, do you know what does shipping cost from Via Francigena offices to Sweden? I was going to say that for Cicerone Press, if you use that website for Cicerone, it costs 5 Great Britain pounds for
mhm.
them to ship anywhere in the world. So that's a great resource. I don't know what your shipping fee is,
No,
but
actually, on our website, it basically has some main information, and then it sends the link to the Cicerone website. So the Cicerone website
okay,
is definitely the website where you can get the guidebooks written by Sandy. So I hope
very
that
good.
answers Agneta's questions.
Let
Then,
me just say to Agneta also that for most English speaking countries, you can also get them on Amazon.com. So we prefer people go to Cicerone Press
obviously.
because the best thing that Cicerone will do is it pays its authors better than Amazon does. So if you love your guidebook author, then buy from the publisher.
We have a little comment also from Joanne, who says, know that if you order a print guidebook from Cicerone, you are entitled to download the ebook edition and GPS tracks from their website.
Yeah,
So I'd say that definitely is a great feature and pro for getting them from the Cicerone
yeah.
website instead of Amazon.
And Mira, if
Yes.
I may, I don't know if we have time, but I just want to say there are some pilgrims that will say to you, you don't need a guidebook. Just save the extra weight of carrying a guidebook and follow the arrows or follow the markers. I just want to say, I don't believe that that is a good way to do a walking pilgrimage because there are some things that the arrows won't direct you to, but you should have the opportunity to see them anyway. And there are things that are on the path that are worth a stop and to take a look at that are not described by the arrows. So, a great kind of compromise is to buy the book in e format, then it's on your phone. The electrons don't add any weight to your phone, but you can access it then. And the way to use it, in my mind, is go to the guidebook the night before and spend 10 minutes reading about what you're going to see the next day. Then put it away, you're fine. But you know that if there's that church or if there is that historical site or if there's a special lodging that you should check out, you know that by virtue of having done your research for that day.
Yeah, yeah, I absolutely agree with you. Last summer, I didn't have a guidebook because, of course, we were accompanied by many local associations during the Road to Rome event, but usually pilgrims don't have these local associations accompanying them. And I would have absolutely missed out on a lot of very interesting and noteworthy yeah, cultural, historical, gastronomical,
Exactly.
anything aspects of the road without them. And probably what they showed me are the exact same things that would be in the guidebook. So
Yeah.
yes, it's definitely an added value to the pilgrimage experience. Um, let's see. There is another question which is not really related to guidebooks, but question: if you ever did you ever get sick or injured along the way and needed medical attention?
Yes, it has happened to me. That's a cool question. So I was walking 2 years ago in Tuscany after Ponte d'Arbia, and I was walking along, and a woman passed me with two dogs on the leash, and one of the dogs jumped at my face and I put my hand up like this, and fortunately I did because the jaws grabbed my hand rather than my face,
Oh my
and
goodness.
and the result was a breaking of the skin. So then I had to decide what to do. And I called my lifeline, who is an American that lives in Assisi. And I said, what should I do? And she told me a process for what to do. I ended up going to the hostel that night and asking for help from the volunteer in charge. He took me to a clinic. I got bandaged up and they confirmed my tetanus shots and gave me some antibiotics. So I think the rule always in pilgrim walking, probably any kind of travel, is talk to your lodging. They're the locals that know the local scene the best. They're likely also to have some language skills if yours are wanting, and they can help you out then. So that's about the worst thing that's happened to me. I stay remarkably well, knock on wood, as I walk my pilgrim journeys.
I have to say that's a pretty crazy story. I mean, if you talk about
Yeah,
injuries walking, I would say like, okay, I hurt my foot, my ankle, maybe some blisters, but no, you got attacked
yeah,
by dogs.
yeah,
Crazy.
darn.
Wow. Which
I
is
love
very
dogs.
like it's not something that happens often. I'd say you were
Right,
probably pretty unfortunate to be at the wrong time and the wrong
yeah,
place. But yeah, luckily nothing
exactly,
very serious happened there. Um,
exactly.
so we have a question from Jacques, and Jacques is actually one of our colleagues from the European Association of the Via Francigena. He asks how many guides are printed by Cicerone at each edition.
I should probably say that that's an industry secret,
Hmm.
but I'm not going. I'm going to answer your question. And Jacques, uh, I love that picture of you. That is
A
fabulous.
picture from during Road to Rome. I love the hat. The hat is
That's
amazing.
great. I visited Jacques in his office in France, and I'm just so impressed with that whole area. And Jacques, you do great work. And before I answer Jacques' question, I just want to say if you're looking for up to date information on accommodation in France, Jacques is one of the people that knows that better than anybody else. The others would be the local, the Randonnée Française. I think there's another group, Via Francigena in France, that puts together lodging information. Quantity helps to keep the cost of each guidebook down, so we're usually in the 3 to 5,000 range. We printed 5,000 of my Camino Frances book, and the new printing, I think I saw that's going to be 6,000 guidebooks. So there you go.
Okay. Oh, okay, great. Thank you. So these were all the questions that were posted in the comments below our live broadcast. I still have two questions from a lady, I think from Spain. But one of the questions was already more or less answered. She asked, "What is the very first step of writing a guidebook? Like, what is the moment you think about writing a guidebook? What is the very first thing you do?"
Yeah.
And when your mother tongue is not English, of course, like she would write in Spanish, but would you suggest her to then have it translated into English,
Mhm.
or maybe first try out the Spanish market?
Yeah. Mira, you're probably a good example of somebody that has really good skill at a variety of different languages. But there's one language that is your native language. And to me, writing a guidebook almost always requires a native speaker. So even translations from another language into English by somebody that's not a native speaker, you can tell. You can just tell because the vocabulary, the word structure, the sentence structure is different. You find words that are in a dictionary, but they're words that a regular speaker wouldn't use. So I should say, unless you have extremely good skills in the language you learned. And I guess I would be thinking somebody at college level, a graduate in that language. So if I were Spanish, I would start first with writing a Spanish language guidebook. Now, translations of guidebooks are a little complicated because if a publisher owns a manuscript and publishes something, say in English, and somebody from Germany says, gosh, I wish we had that guidebook in German, then there needs to be a publisher for Germany for that new guidebook. And the reason is that just somebody that can translate a guidebook isn't ready to publish a guidebook in another language or to market the guidebook in another language. So at the international level, it really works publisher to publisher to publisher, not author to author. And I do believe that an important first step is to get a publisher or to have a plan for how you're going to publish and distribute a guidebook on your own. There are some major guidebooks that are essentially self-published, where the author has set up a publishing house. But to me, the downside of that is that then I'm not an author anymore. I'm a publisher and a marketer of guidebooks. I personally, I want to spend my time out on the road publishing, updating my guidebooks.
Okay, clear. Very, very good, clear answer. So I have two final questions, which I
Okay.
think may be by the same person, but I can't really tell because it all says Facebook user. Um, does your orthopedist evaluate your skeletal structure as stronger than average due to all your walking? It is a very, very funny, curious question. Thank you, Facebook user.
Hmm. You know, no, I don't have an orthopedist that has examined my skeletal structure, but wouldn't that be interesting? I feel like all of those years of inactivity until I was about 55 really helped me because I never blew out my knees or my hips. Now I think my knees and hips are good enough for me to walk into my 80s. And so it's an argument for when you're a youth, not playing football, not playing soccer, not running, being on the debate team like me or being in the drama club like me. All those non-contact extracurricular activities made my knees and hips stronger today. Great question. That's really fun.
Yes, I agree. Very, very nice question. So then now the very last question, and then we're going to um, end our live broadcast. Is it worth carrying a tent? Are there enough places to camp along the way, or will there be enough hostels? So I guess this is about the Via Francigena.
Yeah. Yeah, that's a great question. On the Via Francigena, I would say that a tent could occasionally come in handy, but in my opinion, it's not really worth the extra weight unless you're really operating on a very small budget. So if you're trying to get by with, say, 20 euros a day or 25 or 30, a tent's going to help you out. Um, the Via Francigena in France especially takes planning. So you need to know ahead of time where your lodging is, and that means making a reservation. In France and Switzerland, there's not a system of walk in the door, pay your money, and get a bed without a reservation. In Italy, you still have to do the same thing because there are so many fewer people walking than on, say, the Camino Frances, that nobody is going to hang out waiting to see whether you show up or not so they can unlock the door and show you a bed. They're going to be running their grocery store or their bar, or they're a nun, or they're a retired person. They want a phone call so they can come over and unlock the room for you. So reservations, really, I recommend them on the Via Francigena. I've seen Italians that the day of, they just start dialing the phone to see where they're going to stay that night. I would do it at least a day ahead.
Yes, exactly. And especially now with while we're still in the pandemic situation, if you walk the Via Francigena in the summer, it can get pretty crowded because in summer, of course, it's high season. It's when most people walk the Via Francigena. So in that case, I definitely recommend 1 day, 2 days ahead. I manage sometimes to, in my previous Via Francigena, trip by bicycle to find something the day itself. But if you want to be sure, definitely call beforehand, like 1 day before.
Yeah, I agree.
So yeah, so that's it. I think I handled all the questions and you answered them in an amazing way. Thank you so much for sharing all of your knowledge with us, with the people who are following us on the Facebook group. Maybe in the near future we'll have some more guidebook writers among us, thanks to your tips and tricks of the trade here in the live webinar. And yes, I once again want to thank you. And are there any last words you want to say? Any last comments?
You bet. Myra, I'd just like to say, if you feel you have a guidebook in you, talk to me, because we're very interested in helping to cover the major pilgrimage treks in Europe and around the world. And if that's something that really lights your fire, let's have a conversation. I want to say to you, Myra, you're an example for me of the great joy of walking the pilgrimage routes, because you run into people like you who have all kinds of skills, who love walking and the outdoors and want to see these pilgrim routes flourish. So thanks for asking me to do this, Myra, and just keep on doing what you're doing, because you're helping to make the Via Francigena even better every day.
Thank you so much for your kind words, Sandy. I'm almost blushing here. I hope to be seeing you again very soon, because of course you're in Lucca. I'm in close to Fidenza, so hopefully in springtime we'll have the possibility to meet up again. For everybody who's following us below here, you see that on sandybrownbooks.com. I assume there people can find your contact information in case they are interested in writing a guidebook. If they feel they have a guidebook inside them, I assume there's contact information on your website, right?
Yeah, we'll make sure it's there. Maybe I'll put this PowerPoint up on the website there.
Okay, great. So everybody, if you have a guidebook inside you, if you feel it, please contact Sandy Brown, and then maybe one of the next Cicerone guidebooks or other publishers, who knows, will publish your guidebook. Okay, so that's it for this evening. Thank you again, Sandy, and to everybody else. These webinars will be monthly recurring events. So in the month of February, more or less in the middle of the month, we'll have another one. I still have to figure out who will be our guests, but I'm pretty sure it's going to be as interesting and as fun as this evening. So thank you again, Sandy, and see you all in 1 month. Bye.
Okay. Bye-bye now.
Bye-bye.